Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest in the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Nika Ezzi on the line, and she's managing partner over at VestedWorld. This episode is part of our iConnections Global Alt New York series, where we bring you the best of those that attended and participated at iConnections. Nika, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Adam. Thanks for having me.
All right, so love this topic. We're going to be talking about agriculture and Africa's place in it. So I'm excited to get into this and more. But before we get into that, iConnections, the Global Alts in New York. What's your connection? Have you been in the past to an iConnections event? Is this the first time? Give me some of the backstory, please.
Yeah, this was our second event. We heard of it through another fund manager and thought to try it out. So it was great to be there.
What keeps you coming back two times? So obviously the first time must have been pretty good. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this was my first time in New York, so it was nice to, get a lay of the
Oh.
land. Well, first time for iConnections in New York, so it was good to get a lay of land. Honestly, I think it's the people and the well-organized nature of the event.
Mm.
Things just go really smoothly, and it's a great way to meet a number of people all in one place.
Yeah. So before we get into investor world, how'd you get into this business? Where did that start for you?
Yeah, it started honestly from a consulting perspective. So I was in strategy consulting for 12 years, started my career at McKinsey, and then joined a firm that was more international focused and in Kenya and was there for almost 12 years and before joining, but really started because I started to see this amazing opportunity in agribusiness,
Mm.
personally investing in this space, and through that, met my business partner, joined the investment committee, and then joined Vested World 5.5 years ago. So it was a
Wow.
bit of a winding journey, but all related to Africa and sort of the network that gets built through that.
What was give me kind of high level. What was the draw to where you're like, because obviously with your skill set, with your, background, lots of things you can do. What was your draw into agriculture specifically? Like what interested you about this space?
I personally, I think it was probably just knowing that I come from what I call, seven generations of farmers. So if you think
Oh,
about
wow. That's
my
cool. Go
family
ahead.
history,
Yeah.
yeah, I think from a family history perspective, it is that way. So my mother is African American, and so obviously some of that farming was not by choice. My
Mm.
father is from Nigeria, and really come from a history of farming and farming communities on both sides of the family. So I think it was always just somewhat present. I think going back to the ancestral lands in Nigeria as I was growing
Mm.
up also had a strong draw just to physical place, but then also understanding that everyone in the world needs to eat food, and the question of how does that food get produced and how does it get to the different locations, I think always struck me. And then I spent some time during college in Mexico, actually, with coffee farmers. I think that was another sort of
Mm.
data point that added to that.
It
And
was
then
calling you,
finally,
wasn't it, Nick?
he
It
was
was like
calling me. I
one way or
wasn't
another.
listening at
You
first.
you were fighting it. It was calling you. Go ahead.
Yes, yes. And then when I moved to Kenya, I think similarly just did a lot of projects in the agriculture space and continued to see how important agriculture was to the African economy. So
Mm.
in Africa, it's 50% of the workforce. And back when I moved to Kenya, 17 years ago, it was even
Hmm.
a larger percent of the workforce. And GDP back then, I think, was like a 50% contribution. Now it's just under 20%, but still an important contributor to wages, to workforce, and of course, to just day to day livelihoods for Africans, but also globally.
Yeah. Tell me, let's go further in, switching up slightly here. Let's go further into Vested World. Tell me a little bit more about the firm.
Yeah, Vested World invests in early stage companies in East and West Africa in
Mm.
sectors that we say are overlooked by traditional VC. That ends up meaning consumer, agribusiness, and enabling tech companies that are really helping people eat, live, work, play in the real world. So it's not just, tech for tech's sake, but a
Hmm.
much broader view that we can really transform livelihoods and lives on the continent and potentially globally by investing in sectors that were really critical to the growth path in other markets. So if we look at East Asia, similar growth trajectory where yes, technology was part of that, but some of these other core sectors like manufacturing and ag were critical parts of their journey.
Mm. What's it like working with the entrepreneurs in that industry and geography? It's interesting.
Yeah, in the geography, it's amazing. I think because Africa has historically been under-resourced, so Africa generally gets less than 2% of global venture capital dollars. And from a, GDP or population perspective, we should probably be getting 3 to 4x that
Mm.
amount of capital. So I think what ends up happening is entrepreneurs are incredibly resilient, hardworking, and
Hmm.
really trying to find opportunities for their companies to scale, and oftentimes doing so in creative ways. And because they're capital constrained, finding ways to make it work, even through the lower funding amounts, through potentially other challenges just from the day to day of running their businesses in emerging markets. So I would say resilience is probably the number one feature that we see. But then the other one you see is a lot of like truly high performing rock star entrepreneurs who have strong academic credentials, strong networks, and who choose to really move into entrepreneurship to solve the problems that are in front of them.
Mm. And
And sector,
but
oh, go
mhm.
ahead.
No, no, you go ahead. Mhm.
Yeah, and sector wise, I think it in a way it's ups and downs. So I think in enabling tech, we're still seeing a lot of activity, although most of the activity is still in fintech compared to some of the other sectors. And then there's been increase in funding more on the climate and climate tech side of things. I
Mhm.
think on the agri and agribusiness side of things, still less funding than maybe there should be on the early stage. And much more of that is concentrated in private equity firms who are looking for much larger businesses. But the path to scale, I think you have to just figure out how to be capital efficient and find a way to be attractive to those private equity players. And then in consumer, I think we're starting to see a lot more activity and interest from VCs who are starting to understand that consumer companies that are able to build brands can command pretty high multiples. So I think it's still emerging across the board, but definitely more activity on the enabling tech side than on ag and consumer.
Mm. Switching slightly here, agriculture in general. Maybe we want to start maybe from the high level side of things. Like what do you think some of the potential for agriculture like to is in Africa just in general?
I think the biggest thing comes from the structure of the market. So right
Mm.
now, Africa is an exporter of food, but we import the majority of the things that we eat day to day. So we might export things like ginger or hibiscus or sesame to other markets, coffee, cocoa, so many other products. But in terms of the day-to-day food that people are eating, this might be wheat or even maize, even some of the more basic grains. Africa is a net food importer. What that ends
Interesting.
up meaning is that we are paying top dollar, if you will, for these foods that are coming from Asia, from the US, from Europe,
Hmm.
from the, Central Europe as well. And that ends up really impacting the structure of the economies because oftentimes most African economies are not denominated from a currency perspective in dollars, but you're paying dollars for those imported foods. And
Hmm.
so structurally it's a big challenge. I think the second piece though is that Africa still is has the largest amounts of arable land in the world. And what that means is in terms of land that can actually be farmed, Africa has the most in the world and it has the most amount of arable land that's not yet in use, which means that if people want to farm more, you would
Hmm.
really look at the African continent. So I think those are probably two of the biggest challenges. Obviously, there are other issues around the access to inputs, things like seeds and fertilizer, other issues around post-harvest losses. Essentially, once you bring the plants out from the soil, what happens to them, and do you have the logistics and cold chain to ensure that things get to where they're going in the right quality? But I'd say the larger structural issue is that Africa right now exports food, but we're still a net food importer for the things we
Hmm.
eat, which drives inflation and really makes it a challenging livelihood for a lot of people who are, maybe no longer working on the farm, who are in urban areas.
Yeah. And you can speak from a standpoint of from Vested World as your position there as managing partner, or just you personally, but what are you looking at in the region? It could be whether it's technology specific areas like in terms of solving or let's say moving the agriculture agenda forward. Like what are you looking at?
Yeah, we are looking at economies that are perhaps either investor friendly or building the critical infrastructure to make agriculture make sense. So that could be roads, rail, cold chain, airport infrastructure, seaport infrastructure. So the countries we have tended to focus on are Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya,
Hmm.
partly because we see those across the sectors that we invest in, really developing the core infrastructure that sits alongside those industries. I'd say in a country like Kenya, we love looking at some of the core commodity processing for the local
Mm-hmm.
market. So this might be like making pasta or rice or, making French fries for the local market, but
Right.
essentially doing some amount of value addition that says we're investing in an asset that can actually make money, become profitable, and pay us back over time. We're also looking at some import substitution plays. So as you recall, I mentioned the fact that Africa is importing food. So areas like aquaculture, where historically Kenya has been a net importer of fish, seeing businesses in that aquaculture value chain where they're actually producing fish for the local market are quite
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Have some companies in that space. In a country like Nigeria, it's almost similar. I think we like an aquaculture play. We like things like cocoa, where Nigeria has historically exported a significant amount of its cocoa without any sort of further processing. And I think we see huge potential there. In Ghana, similar around cocoa, cashew processing, tropical fruits, shea butter, areas that you can either have, as I was saying, as food crops for the local market, or you're really looking at export opportunities. And I think what stands out across the companies we really like to look at is that they have really strong financial management in place. They're trending towards being EBITDA positive, and we like a balance in our portfolio between exports and mass market focus, really to hedge the challenge of obviously investing in dollars while some of the income of the companies can be in local currency.
Hmm. Wonderful. Nika, this has been a lot of fun having you on today and getting to know more about what you're doing at Vested World. Last question here. If people want to continue to follow your journey and to learn more about Vested World, how do people follow up? How do they connect?
Yeah, definitely. We have a few different ways. The first would be we have a monthly newsletter that we send out, and people can subscribe via our website, vestedworld.com. And we're also on LinkedIn, both as Vested World and personally I'm on LinkedIn. So happy to connect with people there.
Amazing. For everybody listening, just so you know, we'll definitely put some links in the show notes so that you can click on the links and head right on over. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters and you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. You heard me correct. Each and every day, we're bringing you new content, new ideas, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along the way on your journey as well. So hit that subscribe or follow. And Nika, thanks again for coming on.